welcome to Two's Country and the Isle of Wight. No, you do not need one of those for the Isle of Wight. Actually, we're in the middle of the Solent, but we'll soon be there. And of course, what is the Isle of Wight famous for? The world's premier yachting regatta. What are you doing? Here we are then. See the sign there? It says you have booked your return journey, haven't you? You have booked it, haven't you? What, mine? Right, okay. Do you like it? Well, it's Cows Week. I'm really looking forward to it. Right, you show them where we are, get in and we'll set off around the island. Henry VIII built a couple of forts here at West Cowes, and one of them now gives itself over to the Royal Yacht Squadron. And it's from here that the races during Cowes Week are started, using this lovely, lovely array of cannon from William IV's yacht Adelaide. And out there, a plethora where are the boats? Where are the boats? There should be absolutely... Never mind the cannon. Forget the cannon. Where are the boats? You've made a mess of it. I'm going to check on your stupid personal organiser thing. It was last week, wasn't it? We've missed it. Well, it's a good job that there's more to this island than just boats. What an absolute stupid mess of it. Don't do it. I forgive you. Anyone can make a mistake. What? Are you just paddling? All right. Well, come on out and put those legs away. You'll be putting people off the lunch, you will. Actually, I've decided I don't care about the boats. In fact, let's not bother with a single boat on all of our trip around the island. And talking of the island, the story begins 10,000 years ago when it was cut off from the mainland as the sea level rose. Man arrived about 5,000 years ago. Boom time was the Norman period when rabbits were introduced to the island. Do you know why rabbits did so well here? Because there are no foxes, and they were a cherished food in those days. And the name Cows, well, that comes from the 16th century. I told you Henry VIII built those forts. Well, the 16th century word for fort is cow. That's East Cow and West Cow. Now Cows. And I can see you're bored. Of course, another thing that the island is famous for is the hovercraft. It was invented on the island by Sir Christopher Cockerell using a hairdryer, blowing down onto some scales. He then got two coffee tins, one slightly larger than the other, blew in the top, and it hovered over the smaller one. That principle led to this enormous craft still operating from the island back to Portsmouth, and particularly because Ryde is a very shallow port. There's a lot of sand and a lot of very shallow water, so this thing and all hovercrafts will go over that perfectly. Richard Beer is the pilot. They are pilots of this hovercraft today. Have a quick look at that and I'll introduce you to someone else. Now, sitting next to him is one of the first pilots for this company, which is Hover Travel, and one of the directors of the company, Tony Smith, who's just retired. Tony, are these very different from the early hovercraft?
Yes, they're very much different. They're powered in a different way. They're very much larger, of course, and therefore will carry more passengers. which is really the object of the exercise. The early hovercraft was very much smaller. It carried just 38 passengers, and it was powered by one engine. Admittedly, it was a gas turbine engine, so it had quite a lot of power. But the advance, principally, is to improve the carrying capacity of the hovercraft, which this vessel does very nicely.
This is just one of the many little beautiful picturesque villages that you find all over the island. This is Godsill, and it's delightful. The old smithy there, the little thatched cottages, the Taverner's Arms, absolutely beautiful. I just wish you could see all of the beauty here. Well, actually, you can. That's right. It's a model village of Godsill, perfectly to scale, 1 in 10. This is delightful round here. It's All Saints Church, beautifully done. And there's the real church in the background, and there's a cracking story up there which I'll tell you about in a moment, but more about the village, because of course the model village is within the real village. They had to make a model of the model village, and that's it, with the church and the model church. And this is the old Shanklin, originally done in 1951. These thatched roofs take tremendous attention and also cost a fortune. Do you know, it cost as much to thatch that as it did to thatch a real roof over there? This is the old street with the old shops exactly as they were. They're now all tourist shops and gift shops, but that's how it looked back then. You see, you don't need a helicopter. You can do it just like this, and it doesn't cost a penny. And this is All Saints real scale. There are 2 great stories about this church. One of them concerns a grave which is in the porch. Now, it's only 2 feet below the surface, the flagstones leading into the church. And the reason for that is the person who's buried there said, "Come the resurrection, I want to be able to get out fast." The other one is a local man who inherited some land, but there was a stipulation within the will that said he only got the land as long as he was above the earth. So, when he died, the family came up with a great wheeze, and that was to build a mausoleum so that he was still above the land and they still kept the land. Every heir after him has been buried in the same way, thus keeping the property in their name. They're not daft, these islanders, are they? It's an interesting place, this Brading, you know. You've got the fabulous St Mary's Church there, which is gorgeous, and the stocks inside that sort of Tudor-type building. And yes, you've got your wax museum. There it is, that pink building. Actually, I've never seen a pink oldest building before, because that is the oldest building on the island, dating from the 13th century. No, actually, it goes back even further than that. They found Saxon remains in there, and they've also found Roman remains in there. Now look, it's your old mate, Charles I, the one that knighted you. What was it you decided to call yourself then? Circuit Breaker. Circuit Breaker. I don't understand that. What about this? Got myself a Batmobile, or a Waxmobile to be more accurate. And I've also got a ticket to ride. Well, actually, a ticket to cows. That's in a moment. Did you enjoy your trip round the waxworks then? Good, good, good. And you met up again with old Charlie. Circuit breaker. I really don't understand that at all. Anyway, okay, take it away, Terry. Hit it. Now, talking of things royal... Oh, I get it. Circuit breaker. It's one of your electrical jokes. Right, talking of things royal, Osborne House. Show them where it is. Built and designed by Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. They actually designed it and built it themselves, although of course not brick by brick. They're renovating the gardens at the moment, and in fact you're standing where a statue's going to be. And look, you still haven't got any shoes on. You're a disgrace. Move out of the way. What about me? What about something like... What do you think? No? Okay, right. It was intended to be a family home, and that's exactly what it was. There are quite a few letters from Queen Victoria saying how happy she was in Osborne House. In fact, she stayed here right up until her death on the 22nd of January 1901. Albert actually built it in the style of an Italian villa because he said that the view out reminded him of the Bay of Naples. And next to Osborne House is Barton Manor. Its origins go right the way back to the Saxons when it was Burton, which means manor next to a farm. Albert and Victoria also owned this, and after Victoria's death, Edward VII decided that he would use this as his summer residence, and he gave Osborne House to the people. It remained a royal household for 18 years, and then it was sold for private ownership. In fact, record producer Robert Stigwood owns it to this day. In 1976, they planted that, the vineyard, and they've been producing English wines ever since. They do it all on location, and there they are. They are medal winners. The Wight Dry has won a silver, and they also got a bronze medal. You're trying it, aren't you? I think actually you're supposed to spit it out. There's another lovely story about Money Coppice, which is here, and that was Eustace Mann, who owned the manor during Charles I's time, and he was worried and he hid his money in the coppice here, gold, buried it, and then when he came back to get it, when everything settled down with the royalists, it had been lost and has never been recovered to this day. Like I say, they make all of this on site, bottle it, crush it, and grow it. And I think if you drink any more, you'll be in serious trouble. Do you know why they have a rose at the end of every line of vines? Well, it's because a rose will show the first signs of mildew, and then they know to do something for the vineyard. No, this isn't a vine, but if you move back, you'll see that it is in fact Dionysus, the Greek god of wine, and next to him, Ariadne, his wife, and round the back, his dad, Zeus. And no, it didn't grow like that. It was carved by Norman Gaishes, who has a place on the island, who does figureheads or mastheads for boats. He did, HMS Warrior. And are you sure you're feeling all right? Yeah, you're wobbling a bit. Perhaps now would be a good time to take a break and for you to have some black coffee. Wobbling a bit. Perhaps now would be a good time to take a break. Just a minute. How have you got it doing that? How did you do that? Oh, I thought we'd gone back in time or something. Are you feeling all right now? Hey, knocking all that wine back. You what? Oh, you spat it out like you're supposed to. Well, you had me fooled for a moment. Very funny. And next on the menu is Carisbrooke Castle, which is pretty impressive, and there's been something here since Saxon times, but it's one visitor that I want to tell you about today. He came along in 1647. He'd escaped from Hampton Court in London, and he was, of course, the man who knighted you, circuit breaker, your old mate, Charles I. He came here in November of that year and enjoyed some hunting. He was pretty much a free man. But gradually they took away his chaplains and then his servants, and he effectively became a prisoner of the castle. And that's where he tried to escape from. That window there, it used to be just one window, now it's 2 rows of 5. It had iron bars, and he said, well, because he could get his head through it, that he could get the rest of his body through it. Only when the night came for him to escape, he got stuck, and he couldn't get out, and he couldn't get back in. So that was one attempt over. The second attempt happened in a different room, which is now a ruin, further along here. And they took away some of the bars. They actually sawed some of the bars away. But when he looked down, he saw too many people there waiting to carry him away to freedom. It was a trap. And it's a good job he didn't go down, because he'd have been shot. He used to take morning exercise every morning up here on the battlements. A stroll along here. Oh, there's a soldier guarding it now. How do you do? And of course, eventually, later that year, because the change of the year didn't happen in those days until in the middle of March, he was taken to Whitehall and eventually, accused of treason by Oliver Cromwell, was beheaded. But this is the view, or more or less the view, he used to have each morning. And though out of our bourne of time and place, the flood might bear me far, I hope to see my pilot face to face when I have crossed the bar. That's Tennyson, you know, Alfred Lord Tennyson, and he lived here in the 1850s. This was his home, Farringford. It's now the Farringford Hotel, and lots of famous people came to stay here. He used to invite them out to the island to enjoy its relaxing pleasures. And in fact, lots of artists came here. For example, just round the corner at Winterbourne, Charles Dickens stayed and actually wrote part of David Copperfield. You see, I know all these things. I understand these artists, unlike you, because you do not understand how to play croquet. Thank you. Now watch this. Well, it wasn't bad. And this is what they all come to see, the Needles, which is right down at the bottom end of the island, 2 great big lumps of chalk sticking out of the water. And there's some even more interesting stuff up here, but it's a bit of a climb. You all right? Come on, you'll enjoy it. Actually, the stuff there that you will enjoy. Look at this chalk. It's incredible. It's snow white chalk. Right, up through the gate, because we shouldn't really be out there having a look at that, but we've been allowed. This is Needles Battery up here, which was built in 1862, and it has a lot of the original equipment up here, including some of the cannon, although it actually stopped being a defensive battery quite some time ago, and for the First World War and then onwards they used it for signals and for observation. The Wrens were based in there looking out to the sea. But here you are. Here's some of the original Victorian cannon which were housed here. If I climb up, enormous rifle muzzle loaded cannon, which means they put all the gubbins in at the front end basically. And can you imagine, they had 6 of these. Can you imagine when they went off? Yes, it would be something like that. Actually, it was so violent that when all 6 went off, bits of the island fell into the sea. So they changed their mind about it. And in fact, they took these beautiful cannon and they threw them over the edge down into the water. And it's only recently that they've been pulled back up and restored. This is interesting. Not that just it's a ring of metal, but that was where the first anti-aircraft gun was positioned in Britain. It was an American one. It was brought in during the First World War, and they experimented with it on that site and actually shot at a big box kite that was being pulled by liners out in the water. Right, now this is the steep bit of the climb, but believe me, it's worth it at the top. They finished all the operations here in the 1950s, and they built up on the higher point the Black Knight missile testing site, or rocket testing site. And that's where they were fired from, right up there. And look at that for a view. Now, wasn't that worth the effort? And just look at the strata of the chalk, the different layers of the chalk going down. Absolutely sensational. And over here, you get a grand view of the bay itself, the Solent, and you can see the entrance being protected, and that's what this was all about, protecting the fleet, which would be based in Portsmouth or Southampton. Now, 1,000 years ago, there was another fella who spent some time up on here. Yeah, 1,000 years ago. His name was Harold, King Harold. And he spent the summer of 1066, not many people know that, on the Isle of Wight, watching his fleet going up and down the channel, because he knew as long as his fleet did that, William, later the Conqueror, would not attempt to come across. Sadly, he ran out of money. The fleet came in and William came over. The rest, as they say, is history. How is it I'm a little sceptical about these travel arrangements you've made? No, I mean, let me get this right. You've arranged for me to have first-class travel off the island, yeah? I don't have to go with the hoi polloi on the hydrofoil or the hovercraft or the ferry, no? I've got my own way of getting off to the Isle of Man for the next programme. Okay then, I believe you. Where is it? Where is it? What? What? You... Oh, let me... A tin bath. You want me to go in it? They race these things for fun, you know, they sink. He said first class. First class, you said? Is this a class 1 racing vehicle?
Yeah, this is a class 1 ocean racing tin bath you got here.
Class 1, right. Ah! Right. I get that. Next time you join us, we'll have the Laxey Wheel, the world's biggest junk shop, which this should be in, kippers, and everything else the Isle of Man has to offer. If I ever make it. Yes, bye-bye.
And Tim Grundy lands on the Isle of Man right after the break here on TLC.